Welcome everyone to the NEMSIS V3 implementation call. Today is February 24th. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. We've got a pretty straightforward agenda today. Let's go down to that. Just as a reminder, we do record these sessions. So if you miss one or there's a section that you'd like to share with your team, they are made available on our website and also our YouTube channel. Those are usually up by the afternoon tomorrow. They get up and posted on the website pretty quick. So those are available to you for review. We do appreciate comments, questions, concerns. So you're welcome to unmute your microphone or use the chat feature. We will watch that as well. And feel free to chime in when you've got a question or comment. We're going to go ahead and start today off with Laurel. She's going to give us a maintenance update.
Good morning, everyone. So last week we had our maintenance window, which we extended in order to deploy the changes for 3.5. And the update this week is that everything is complete with one small exception. And the 3.5 changes have been deployed. So as soon as you're ready to submit 3.5 data, we will be ready to receive it. Our one small outstanding item is the NEMSIS cube, which we are currently still working on. A lot of data, over 100 million records. Sometimes it takes a long time to get it reloaded. And we expect that to be available towards the end of the week, this week, if not very early next week. And that's the maintenance update. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask now or send me an email. And if you notice any problems with submissions or access to any services, please feel free to let me know of that as well so we can address those. Thanks.
Thank you, Laurel. Any questions for Laurel? All right, let's go ahead to the next agenda item, and that's an ET3 update with John and Neil.
Hey, Julianne. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Looks good.
All right, great. All right, well, I'm just going to cover a few things. Thanks a lot for letting us be a part of this meeting again. Some updates that just wanted to report to everyone. We did announce an extension that would be for the initial data, ET3's data submissions. So what that means is the February 28th date that we published and had everyone driving towards, we're going to give a 60-day extension on that. And what that means is that, your initial data submissions should capture not only January 2021, but also February 2021 and March. So there'll be 3 months of data submission that we'll be looking for in your submission. In addition, the historical data is still required, again, by the April 30th date. So as some of you have heard already, it is historical data from March of 2019 to February of 2020. So we're excluding most of 2020 due to COVID. So that's those dates. We're not looking for historical data from you. And I just wanted to remind everyone, if you have a situation where you are looking to send us more than the historical date range that we've outlined here, just let us know. We just want to be aware that more than what we've asked for data is coming in, and ultimately that data is going to get filtered so that it doesn't get into our lower databases. So that would be helpful if you give us that reminder. In terms of our onboarding, we've got some counts to report. So in terms of the participant vendors that have been successfully approved for security keys, right now the numbers are right around 25 users. We also have approved API key requester roles. There's about 44 users that have those roles granted to them. And we also are seeing ePCR records coming in. As of yesterday, it was right around 91,000 PCRs that we've received. And in terms of those submitters, we've got about 6 right now that are submitting on a regular daily basis. So we are, looking at obviously increasing these numbers as more folks are getting onboarded. But I did want to report that this is sort of the beginning process here as we're leading up to the end of February. In addition, we've got a crosswalk that we're finalizing, and this is something that would give vendors an understanding of which participants we have, data or information around them supporting a particular participant. So that is something that would be coming out. And Clay, I think you have that in your to-do list, right, to get this out to folks?
Certainly do. Is it okay to share my screen just real quickly?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. I'll start sharing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll do that real quick. So we just yesterday received kind of the finalized list where we attempted to just ensure that we have all the participants that are associated with the project. And I think what was the final count, John? What's the number? I apologize. I'm looking real quick. What's the
that's
number?
Okay. We're right around 185 on the participant count.
Okay, yeah. Great. So 185 agencies. We just sent out this morning to each of the state data managers this list that has all states with EMS agencies participating in ET3 on tabs along the bottom. And so each state will be able to go into, here's, for example, Arizona. They'll be able to go in and see the name of the agency, and then D agency 01, D agency 02, and of course, D agency 04 is in column A. And so they'll be able to identify these agencies through the NEMSIS elements. And of course, their unique state IDs that are assigned by those states. And then what vendors these agencies reported with during 2020. So this will hopefully provide the states with information regarding who's participating in their state, the information that they had requested. We're working right now to develop individual Excel spreadsheets for each of the vendors. That should be out for sure this week, if not by the end of today. We're just double checking it right now and finishing up that work. So we'll send a final list to each of the vendors of the agencies that are participating in ET3. So that will hopefully help vendors from their end be able to identify who needs to be onboarded. Any questions regarding this list? Okay, John, I'll turn the screen back over to you. Thank you.
Clay, we did have one question. In the section where the vendor is blank, Anne is asking what that means.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me share my screen just one more time. Yeah, to go through that question. So yeah, we're right here, for example, a Mesa fire. That is blank, probably because we do not have any indication that Mesa Fire, see who that is, Mesa Fire and Medical Department has submitted a record to NEMSIS. So we...
Clay, this is Anne. I know they have, let me talk with you offline about this later because I know they're submitting.
Okay. And that's a great...
That's what confused me is I thought, well, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question, Anne. And when you get this list, if you have questions, please reach out to Monet and we'd love to fill this out more precisely. If you have other information that can help here, I know that both ET3 and the NEMSIS Tech would love to have that information. So thanks, Anne. That's a great question. Were there any other questions in the chat, Julianne?
don't see any.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Any other questions regarding the list? Yeah, and please feel free to reach out. We'd love to be able to keep this list as up to date as possible and ensuring that we're getting the correct information to CMS. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Clay. I appreciate that. So these are pretty much the updates that I had. Just wanted to reach out to Neil. I know you're online right now. I don't know if you had any updates that you wanted to share with folks as well.
Hi, thanks, John. No updates other than what you've covered with the extension. That was the big piece that we had sent out an email on, I think, late Monday with that. Yeah. It was to the participants, but certainly happy to share any other details on that email to all the vendors here present, but just wanted to make sure that part is out there. I know that was coming up, so happy to get that communication out there.
Okay. All right, just a few things I want to cover before I end up. So yeah, we've got the dates pretty well set here. So there's an initial data submission by the 30th of April. Then remember the subsequent data submissions after that is going to be due by the last day of the following month. So there are some dates here, and we'll share these slides with you after the meeting. I did want to cover a couple of things here. I'm going to just scroll down to the reminder tips. I covered this last time, but maybe I can do even a better job of covering it this time around. I guess there's a couple of entities, I'll call them, that are involved with ET3 from a system standpoint. So one, of course, is the vendors, software vendors. The other is the participant themselves. And what we're seeing is obviously participants coming in and requesting roles, and we're seeing vendors as well. I think what we want to do is make sure everybody understands what role to request, depending on what role that they're intending to play. So for the participant, there are three options in terms of requesting a role. Two of them are looking to be addressed against the CDX system. And if you recall, that is our central data exchange system that allows for you to pass data to CMS. There's another role under ET3. So if you choose that as the application, there's a role there that should be chosen, which is called the participant role. So under CDX, there's two. There's the API key requester role, which is used to submit and manage API security key requests. The other is the model participant role, which is used to view PCR data that's been uploaded. And again, those would be roles that we would expect a participant to request coming in. In terms of the software vendor, there's really one role that we are seeing, and would expect, which is the API key requester role. And that's the most important role that the software vendor would be interested in. So I just want to, outline that there's two potential roles for CDX, and there's one for ET3. If you're a participant, if you're a software vendor, there typically is only going to be one role. So I just wanted to outline that to folks. Another reminder and tip that I covered last week, and we're still seeing some records come in. There needs to be a valid value in terms of the SOAP message when you are filling out the WS organization tag. So as you recall, this is typically when you are doing a submit data request type, that tag should have a valid organization name in it. And one of the things I went ahead and did was do a screen capture here, and I'm going to try and expand on this a little bit so folks can see it. So there is a organization legal name. There's also a doing business as name. We would take either one of those. We also would take the D-Agency 3 name. And as you can see, in some cases, the legal name may be fully written out, the doing business name may be shortened, and you might even see in D-Agency 3 just something pretty simple with a 3-letter code or something like that. But I just want to point out that these should be in WS organization tag when you're passing data for every SOAP message. Likewise, we also want to make sure the D-Agency 1 and 2 values are valid. And that's kind of what Clay just covered with what they're sending out to the state directors. the state managers, which is, again, you guys will get a copy of this as well, but every one of the participant agencies have a unique D-Agency 1 and D-Agency 2, which is the state unique ID, and the other is the EMS agency number. And those need to be passed based on the key code that we have here. So we're expecting, again, these codes to come in on those PCRs. So I just want to point that out to everyone as well. In terms of the help, just wanted to, let me just go back to our support here. We've got the webinar that's still out there. There's the submission, the data submission guide that's there, which is posted on ET3 Connect. We have another product that we're about to put out, which is the frequently asked questions. And so in there, we've received a number of questions over the last month and a half, and we wanted to address those so that everyone can have access to those answers. So that will be out momentarily. So look for that. And then obviously we have the help desk support that you guys are already using. In addition, Neil and I are getting emails from folks, which we're open to that, and we will respond to you as quickly as possible. So I'm going to just stop there, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free.
Hey, John, this is Samantha with ESO. I was wondering, is there any way that vendors could be the communication list when extensions like this are announced? Because we were fortunate that we got the information for some of our participants, but we would like to get that communication directly.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I think, Neil, we can take back and see if we can develop that list and include it for any of the future communications. What do you think about that?
Agreed. Yeah, we'll take that back and then just tack to make sure we have up-to-date contact info for the participating vendors for EP3, and then make sure that's consolidated. And even if we have to make a separate list, just mirror the same messages we're getting to participants. But yeah, we'll take that back as the best way that we can communicate directly with the vendors.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
John, can you make sure that that just includes pretty much all training that goes to the organizations?
Well, I think.
I'm sorry, all training you said in terms of those communications? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, like if there's new webinars, if there's new data that's going, not just extensions and sort of policy stuff, but actual training stuff as well.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll take that back as well. Yep. All right, any other questions? All right, I'll turn this back over to you. Yeah.
Is there any major concern that only six customers of the 180 are submitting?
Neil, you want to cover that?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that. There has been some concern for sure, especially as we got closer to the end of February deadline. I guess one thing I'll mention here is we've definitely gotten a lot of questions from participants regarding the authorities and concerns with privacy with the submission of all ePCRs. So I think that has been part of the delay in getting more participants onboarded and ready to submit data. So that also factored into the 60-day extension. I don't have a good time frame, but we are developing just a consolidated document that should address all the questions we've received in that area with the data submissions, as well as references to the different statutes and authorities that CMMI, which houses ET3, has for collecting that data, and other assurances regarding the use of that data. So that is still, we're in the approval chain right now. So we're hoping to get that communication out, ideally by the beginning of March. But I think once that communication is out, I think that will help. That's certainly been a big concern for some participants. And then the other part that we've seen is just kind of everybody wrapping their heads around the data submission. And we know from our end, we've also had some features and some delays and snags with our system as we've turned it on. So I think I would say optimistically, that's probably a big reason for the delays. And I think with the 60-day extension and everybody coming through, we've already seen signs that, that different participants are getting on board and moving through with the access request. So maybe check back with us again and see if we're still worried in a couple of weeks during the next implementation call. But for now, I think we're in a good spot. The deadline extension, I think, certainly will help. We still want to make sure we get all of that up to speed as quickly as possible. But I think we were worried. We're in a better spot now, especially as we get some more communications out. And like I said, maybe check back with us when our next update in a couple of weeks to see if we're still worried.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. Let's put the agenda back up for just a minute. Next up is IHE Profiles supporting NEMSIS interoperability. Clay, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, would love to do that. Can you hear me okay, Julianne?
Yep, you sound good.
Great. Yeah, so we've had the opportunity over the last several months to be working closely with ONC in determining how best to kind of move forward with implementation tools that would help with interoperability of NEMSIS 3.5, right? So we've been preparing to do this. It's been delayed a little bit with the pandemic, but Eric, most closely working with ONC, we've identified an ongoing project actually that is closely aligned, almost parallel with NEMSIS. That's been going on through IHE International, which is a standards organization, much like HL7, working to allow for interoperability of version 3.5. And we were introduced to Andrea Fourquet, who is here with us today, who's actually been the author of several profiles, much like implementation guides that are provided through HL7 that deal with kind of important exchanges of data that are important to NEMSIS. So there's actually 3 profiles, and I'm gonna butcher this. I'm positive of that. I'm still working to understand the profiles completely, but great work that looks at the exchange of NEMSIS data from, for example, the back of an ambulance to an emergency department as a patient's arriving. There's another profile that deals with interfacility transfers, right? So how do you get the important medical record information into the EPCR before this interfacility transfer happens? And then also getting outcomes data to come back into an EMS record to provide information regarding patients' conditions once arriving at the hospital. So 3 important areas of data exchanges for EMS. Folks remember that here at the TAC, either through our implementation meetings held in Park City and other work we've done, we've been developing an idea of how best to make these tools work moving forward with the 21st Century Cures Act and everything else. Do we continue on with developing tools associated with the HL7 CDA, or do we move to FHIR? Andrea has actually built these profiles that provide information regarding both, right? So we can continue with the current work and interoperability using the CDA model, but also then being able to use FHIR specifications moving forward. And there will be a deadline where we'll need to be moved to the FHIR specification. So 2 of these profiles that Andrea has been working on are under review right now. And that's why we invited her here to talk about those. And I'll mention those of you who have volunteered to serve on a committee that's looking to ensure that we provide interoperability tools that are going to be working for what's currently happening in the environment in regards to NEMSIS providers, or providers of NEMSIS data, so compliant vendors, and the other side of the handshake, those who have wanted to participate in that group, we're actually going to bring them on to what's going to be called an external SME group, and so that we can further discuss what Andrea has done and see if we can polish it a little just based on our understanding of NEMSIS. So Andrea, with no further ado, is it okay if I turn it over to you? I know that you're here today.
Yeah, of course. That'd be great. So again, I'm Andrea Fourquet. I'm here representing kind of IHE USA and the and IHE. It's international as well. And yes, so basically these profiles have been in development in the quality outcomes and public health, quality reporting and public health domain and the patient care coordination domains within IHE. And Clay kind of brought you through what each of these profiles are going through. The main two profiles that are out for public comment right now are the paramedicine care summary, which is the transport between the truck and the ED information. And that, to kind of give you an overview, that's kind of like it has two documents for its transaction. One is the clinical subset, and one is the complete report. Clinical subset being what is essentially just needed for the people in ED to treat the patient. So essential encounter data and clinical data, whereas the complete report will contain everything, and that is going to be more conducive for you and the hospital to have reporting outcomes pieces for registries as well as getting that information back to you and having that that whole report on file. The second profile that is out for public comment as well is the routine interfacility transport. The name has been changed, so it will get confusing. It's actually referral now, for interfacility patient transport. And again, as Clay said, that is to get the patient information from the hospital to the truck and an interfacility transport. And I see a comment asking, the first name was the paramedicine care summary. I'll have links in the chat as well for these profiles. So those two are in public comment right now. And the reason why they have been resubmitted to public comment is because it's kind of going through a revamp to align with NEMSIS 3.5 and to also kind of shape itself around the international patient summary, which is more of a European-based project. However, that project does seem to have a strong alignment with the US CDI requirements that are coming up as well. So that is to keep in mind. The third profile is the quality outcomes profile. And that one is actually, we've just opened it up within the quality reporting for public health domain. That committee has reopened this profile for volume 4, which is US-centric development and a template development for this as well. And I see a comment asking for the previous RIPT name. So the previous name used to be routine for interfacility patient transport. It's going to be, you're going to see it under a new name in this public comment as a referral for interfacility patient transport. So yes, so those two main profiles, they use like a document sharing, and of course are in FHIR and CDA. The quality outcomes profile is mainly just in FHIR. It can be set up as a query or a send, depending on which you would prefer to use for those ones. And obviously you can ask questions about those if you would like.
Yeah, Andrea, this is Clay. I just brought up an email I think that we posted on the NEMSIS Google group. So if folks want access to where comments can be provided and where they can access these documents, it's provided here. It would be great to put in the chat as well. I'll mention, as I've kind of begun the review of these documents, they're very well done. We're lucky to have Andrea, who also is a provider, and so understands the importance and kind of the intricacies of the industry. You'll note as you go through these documents, there are clearly attributes of NEMSIS that aren't well represented by current fire specifications or other standards for healthcare. That's understandable. We knew that was always present. Andrea has done a good job of pointing those out. So maybe part of the work of the external SME committee will be, how do we get these concepts represented correctly moving forward, and are there other gaps that we need to fill? Also keep in mind that the work that we've done over the past several years in regards to the outcome issue has been this idea that perhaps from the NEMSIS side of the handshake, so from the EMS side of the handshake, could we develop kind of a standard template that really includes the elements that are important to the e-outcomes section of NEMSIS? So the national outcomes data that we want to collect that now is pretty simple. What states may in addition want to collect on a common basis based on the current work that's happening with care quality, with image trend, with ESO and others beyond LUCID that are collecting outcome data. What are states asking for? Can we develop a template that can be made available to ease some of the burden associated with building these exchanges? I think Andrea is open to the idea of looking at adding a specification for a template that we may want to provide for the exchange of that outcome data. So I think there's real possibilities here. I think this is just a great jumpstart that will help us to be able to move down this path pretty quickly and provide some tools kind of ahead of the implementation of 3.5, and so we can all be kind of better prepared for those exchanges. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Or Andrea, is there anything you'd like to add regarding what I've said? I may have misrepresented something.
Well, actually, yes, it's more of we have opened the quality profile to start work on creating that template. So it's more than a possibility. It's actually, we've just kicked it off and going into work as of last week.
Thank you, Andrea.
And I also want to put forth an offer if we want to set up like an info session where I do like a deep dive of the profiles and help facilitate some public comments and help whoever needs help with some of the public comment pieces. I can set aside some meetings and some times to do that for the group as well, if that might be easier, since I understand that IHE Profiles is pretty new for a bunch of people, and kind of get this deep dive for each of the paramedicine care summary and the referral profiles. I feel like that would be a benefit for some of our people here, and it will help facilitate some of the public comment process as well.
Great, Andrea, and I'm seeing some votes in the chat to plan on having those deep dive conversations. So that'll probably be valuable, Andrea.
Yeah, Clay, this is Ben at Image Trend. Andrea, thanks for coming and kind of walking through some of this with us. I took a couple of days to review this since Julianne sent it out. I think it raises a lot of questions. I do see that it's revision 2.0 draft for public comment. I don't know that maybe I was even looking in the right place to look for it the first pass. I think there's a lot that we're very interested in. I think there's just probably a lot that we still, I could probably come up with 20 questions after reviewing these. Even things maybe as basic as kind of the RIPT. I found the note about kind of the naming convention being modified to be more universal. For most of us, paramedics and people dealing with EMS data, even that name is kind of confusing and as is the revised name, and would require explanation from us to our clients about this is or is not inclusive of 911 scene calls, et cetera. So, I think we would be very interested in seeing kind of more, detailed explanation and understanding what the relationship of the two documents are to each other, if at all. I know the RAPT document has NEMSIS references in the tables, whereas the PCS doesn't. So it could just be that I'm confused. I suspect that may not be the only person who's confused about kind of how maybe these two fit together.
Yeah, of course. And this is the kind of these are the kind of questions and things that we are looking for when we put these documents out to public comment, so that they can be fixed before putting back into a trial. So that would be great, and that's awesome.
Likewise, this is David from Beyond Lucid, and we're heavily interested in the documents. The comment period seems to only run through next month. I think that doesn't sound like enough time for a lot of input from the EPCR vendor side. And I'm wondering if, would that be extended potentially based on how well we can participate?
Yes, so because I am the author of these and I'm facilitating the work for these, I can do like an unofficial extension between for review on these documents. Mm-hmm. You just have to submit it directly to my email instead of that link after the comment period closes. But I have enough time between the end of our comment period and the next face-to-face to get additional, to unofficially extend it. So that is a possibility that can happen as well.
Okay, so I'm seeing about 19 unresolved issues. I wasn't sure even what the process looks like on your side. So we'd be really starting from a very zero starting place with, not that we don't want to, we'd love to contribute, just I don't the timeline and how we contribute would be where we would start the explanation on that. So like the kickoff meeting that you mentioned.
This is Laurel Fourquet. I'm also with IHE on one of the QRPH Quality Research and Public Health co-chairs. The other thing you should be aware of in IHE, it's very easy to do a change proposal. So if we need interim revisions or, you find things along the way, once Andrea makes it through this pass and gets it published, it's very simple to make updates that maybe weren't caught. And then the other approach I've had I work a lot with CDC domains, we'll sometimes put in a general comment so that we can do some more roll up the sleeves during the comment resolutions.
Yes, and to add on that as well, we don't expect to have all of the open issues closed until publishing to an normative standard, which can take a time. And so change proposals and things like that are to be expected while with the development. So it's basically like we're not looking to resolve all the open issues, but we're trying to resolve all the comments that may come in during the public comment area. And if you want me to go into more of a detail of how that process is that when we close the public comment, I'm going to catalog all the comments that I receive, and we'll go through them, and some of them I might be able to resolve on my own, and some of them will be committee discussions, and the committee might help close those. And once all of those are closed and then updated in the profile, we will then submit that profile for trial implementation. And then the next step of that would be connectathon testing. So it's kind of like all these, there are a bunch of little steps in here. So it's not, while we would like to resolve all the comments, there are just some things that might take a lot longer to resolve, which will end up in the open issues section of the profile. I hope that clears that up a little bit.
The committee you mentioned, is that IHI committee, or is that, do you have other EMS agencies contributing on that?
That would be the IHE committee for these two profiles, specifically the patient care coordination.
Okay.
Maybe kind of piggybacking on David's point, who currently is representative in that process? Do we know?
So are you asking what EMS bodies? So
right. I mean, maybe borderline too candid, but all of us on this call as vendors, we would like to believe we are experts in the EMS data, and we make it understandable for our clients. And we frequently kind of navigate challenges of what is the standard and how does that communicate and fit with other things. So we're just kind of curious, what kind of insights, are a part of or represented in a committee that is kind of reviewing this document.
So this committee, unfortunately, we haven't been able to engage enough of the EMS community. And that's kind of like another thing that we're looking for is more EMS community engagement from all of you, of course. And for the development of these profiles, we had some help from Zoll, and as kind of like I think specifically Greg Mears on some of the mapping that's happened here and some of the development of those profiles. But for long-term participation in the committees, we have, I believe we have Epic. We have Epic as a representative from Epic participating in the next committee. We have a representative from Allscripts as well, and I believe she's also a clinician. So we have, the purpose of these committees, and while PCC is kind of small at the moment just because of, COVID and everything, is to have a variety of people from across different fields of practice and interoperability. So we have, we're looking for, clinical experts and, EHR people as well as technical experts as well. And we do have a variety of those there. So that's kind of like the community that you're going to be looking at. And that will be reviewing these comments and helping to resolve some of the more technical issues rather than the information-based issues.
Andrea, do you have anyone from the health information exchange space on any of those committees?
I want to say yes, but I'm not sure. Lori, do you know anybody in PCC?
Most of the health information exchange folks participate in the IT infrastructure committee.
Okay.
And there's one representative, Dee Dee Davis. She does like care quality. She participates in QRPH. I don't know if she attends PCC. I think she does when there's something relevant.
She does. She and John Markey, who are both a part of that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Andrea, this is Clay. A great description. Thank you. I'm just going to ask the more direct question. I think is there room on the review committee to have a representative from the vendor community who routinely is involved in interoperability of NEMSIS data? Is that a possibility?
Definitely, yes. We're always looking for more specific expertise, especially with these profiles, which we've been lacking, unfortunately. So yeah. It'll be very welcome.
And I'll add an additional spin. IHE really started with vendors and implementers. It's really where the rubber meets the road on standards interoperability implementation. We have a Connect-a-thon, this year's is coming up next week, where we formalize testing of the vendor's conformance to the specification, and then that's published so that if you are trying to express what you conform to for your customers, there's an IHE integration statement. So it's very much geared toward vendors. Historically, it's been more EMR vendors and radiology and as labs. As these domains spin up, we've had more and more engagement from a variety. But as Andrea pointed out on the EMS side, we've had some experts give input, but we haven't had the level of input that you guys have to offer, which would be fabulous. And that's really what it's about, is getting it right for your customers.
Yeah, I would just maybe speak for ImageTrend, but I think it'd be echoed by others. I mean, if we could share the process for finding out how we can gain some involvement. I mean, we have an entire division that deals with interoperability, and I maybe am here to take a pot shot at EHR vendors, but they're not specialists in EMS data by any measure. Exactly. Which is in fact the challenge and the problem is.
That is, I will echo that, Ben. That is a huge challenge.
Yeah, and so we'd love to be a part of, because this is what we solve problems for every day, of the week, is how do we make this data, which is in a wonderful, well-structured standard, how do we make it interoperable, and work through that. So yeah, I think there's quite a few of us that would be very interested in augmenting the work that's being done.
Yeah. So, participation in the weekly or meetings, or, when it's on the agenda meetings during the development and the committees themselves, is your most roll up the sleeves approach. If you don't have the bandwidth to do that, you can review the documents during public comment and give input, and, either let the committee handle the resolution or come to the committee to resolve your comments during that session. And then as implementers. So, we have a lot of vendors that don't have the bandwidth to send somebody to do the development of it, but they will be implementers, strong implementers, and they'll come to the Connect-a-thons.
No, that sounds good. Thank you.
And
I'm sorry. I was just wondering, this is Kelly from ImageTrend, and I want to make sure that we are coordinated to be involved in that committee. I know, Andrea, you were going to share your email address. Would you be able to put that into the chat so I can make sure we can contact you?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to piggyback what Lori said about being involved in the development process of the profile, with the core profile, there's we have this item that we've just opened up within the committee, and I believe CORF meets weekly. And if you guys want to be a part of that process, as this is a new work item that's going to be on the agenda for development, et cetera, that we can also send out like invites to you for involvement in that, and you can be a part of that development as well.
Yeah, so this is Clay. I'll just mention, in conversation with Eric Chaney just this last week, I think he's very interested in the NEMSIS TAC helping provide some resources to ensure some additional work can be completed, and kind of add to helping provide transparency between this process and moving it forward. I think the idea from the Office of EMS is just that this is a great effort that offers an incredible kickstart, to be able to make these tools and specifications a reality. So we'll do our best to work with Andrea and the committees to ensure that we have engagement. So it sounds like, Andrea, folks can contact you directly to receive information regarding the weekly meetings and when these profiles will be reviewed. Is that correct?
That is correct. Just let me know if you want to participate in that deep dive, and then I'll send out like a Google poll on on what days would work best for everybody.
Okay. Okay, Andrea, and then we'll work with you in regards to this external SME panel that's being developed. I think they'll probably have more wide sweeping recommendations just to ensure that, as Ben has so well described, kind of the idiosyncrasies associated with the pre-hospital setting are represented well. So, yeah, I'm excited. There's clearly work to do, but this is an incredible start with good momentum and a strong organization behind it. So this should work out very, very well.
Clay,
I'll mention, yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Sorry, Clay. Who will set up the calls that were discussed with Andrea? So will that be on her side, or will we schedule that just so we can get the vendors to participate and have her do like a walkthrough as discussed?
Yeah, Andrea, I think this is what you call the deep dive calls, right? Where folks can get better aware of the process that you're using and kind of what you've built so far, where the gaps are. Do you want us to set those up, Andrea?
If you feel like that would provide more outreach and getting more involvement, then yes.
Okay, I'll defer to the group on that. What I heard and I saw in the chats was interest in having those calls. If there's no interest, we won't waste the time, but it looked like there was interest. So at least let's try one. And then if there's additional discussion or interest, then we'll schedule another one. If not, we'll just stick with the one.
I believe we might need 2 calls for, it would probably be more comfortable to have 1 profile per call, just so we can have the focus on each of those. That's my recommendation.
Not a problem. Make it happen. Thank you.
This is Anne, the state data manager from Arizona. And I'm not familiar with some of the more technical discussion we've just had. But we have a statewide HIE in Arizona. It's not associated with a company that also provides EPCR, so it's for the whole state. We have every hospital in our state pretty much participating. We also have our vendors sending data back and forth. But from a state perspective, there have been a lot of challenges. They don't speak the same language, even though the HIE gets all the data. It's not in a format that's always consumable because it's not in whatever HL7. So I don't know at what point in this process it would be important, but down the road, it might be good to include some states in the discussion of what we're actually looking at getting back from hospitals. Because I think without that, sorry, you can hear my dog in the background. I think without that, you might miss some of the information that when we get into a really technical discussion, we miss the part where we look at what's the most pertinent and usable information that a state or an agency might want back on a patient, just as an idea.
Yeah, and that's actually very important, I think, in all walks of this profile development, not towards I wouldn't leave it towards the end, since we are dealing with the information here and you want to know. I do recommend highly that you do get involved in the quality outcomes profile development with the QUIRF committee, because that profile does do a variety of things, including the outcomes data about reporting to registries and et cetera, like that, and having a state perspective on that is really important for obvious reasons, for the interoperability aspect of it, especially for HIEs, since that is what we believe is a very good part of interoperability.
And this is Eric, just to be clear, you mean state EMS offices, state health departments, state hospital associations, or some of the above?
I myself meant at least involve the people who are going to be using the data that's going back and forth in the end. So it probably would be all of the above. For myself, I was thinking of EMS agencies, because of what we do. We get the data back into our system. It's available to the agencies on the individual records or in a report. And then we also sometimes use some of the outcome data. But we've had a problem getting things back because of the formats aren't in a standardized format. And also the fact, for example, I guess labs aren't formatted the same way, so we can't get lab results, just things like that, that if we're going to, and like I said, my understanding is not technical of this, but we're going to create a standard where EMRs can send to HIEs and HIEs can send back to EPCRs and back and forth. The kind of information that both sides need, I think, is what's going to drive customers, meaning the EMS agencies and the hospitals, to want to put the effort and the money into it.
And this is Ben, I think you raise a good point, like with labs, especially on kind of the technical side, is, the FHIR framework does really accommodate this much better than previous versions. The integration you guys have, and really all EMS agencies, primarily are built on HL7 version 2.x, maybe a HL7 version 3. So there's a lot of good structure around version 4 and FHIR, but this is in fact kind of the nitty gritty detail work of an interoperability path for the whole industry. Is that, the NEMSIS framework is wonderful. It's not, but it was built before HL7, version 4, right? If you look at the NEMSIS gender list as it compares to the FHIR list, right? There's a crosswalk that has to happen between those, because the values are different, the codes are different. So it's kind of the same thing. Thinking about bringing back lab work. The good news is FHIR really creates a great structure. The downside is we need to figure out, is there accommodation and is there structure in place on the NEMSIS side even to receive that and receive it into a useful place.
Yeah, great comments, Ben.
And what Anne is saying is that it's important to have, I would say, all of the above, but be involved in kind of this development of the standards, especially since these places are going to end up using this information. So I think that's important involvement, and any feedback that those communities can put forward is also very important.
Any other questions for Andrea?
Any idea when that call might happen?
We can.
Go ahead, Andrea. Sorry.
I'm just saying, I have a very flexible schedule. So, but next week is the IHE Connectathon. So anytime after next week, we can start setting up those calls. And like I said, obviously the public comment period will be generally extended for this group because of that. But we can figure out times, and I can figure out flexibility for those times, even as early as next week if everyone's availability lines up.
Great, Andrea. Thank you. All right, fantastic.
Would you be sending out her email address, Clay? Or?
Yeah, Andrea, do you want to list that in the chat? If you could do that, that would be helpful. I think several folks would like to contact you directly, and that'd be helpful and appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Super. Okay. On a related topic, I just wanted to also mention that we've been notified that our current ANSI approved normative standard that we have in HL7 right now, that's based on NEMSIS version 3.4, has been in place for 5 years, and so it needs to be renewed. So we have a contractor who's going to help us to renew that current normative standard and correct any errata or other kind of errors or unclear segments of that implementation guide that could be clarified or corrected. So if you had folks who used that implementation and found some corrections or some attributes of that implementation guide that you would like updated, we'd love to receive those. I've received several folks contacted us kind of over the 5 years in regards to a mismatch between LOINC codes that are maintained on the LOINC site compared to what's included in the implementation guide. So we've known about that. We've had some preliminary discussions about that, but we'll make sure that those are corrected with this update.
Clay, because we have an ongoing issue we've discovered in testing where we've tried to put the NEMSIS CCDA payload and the Epic instance where we were working with that team, they were able to recognize the CCDA, but not to reconcile it. Where should we kind of direct some of this and see where the issue might lie? Potentially in the the authoring of the document. We're not sure if it's the authoring of the document and some of the framework there, or if it actually comes back to, in this case, Epic saying that they can interrogate and interpret this file, but maybe didn't actually test that.
Oh, that's a great thought, Ben. Yeah, so so we'll engage the contractor who's going to be working on this, and we'll make some connections, Ben, and see if we can provide some further deep dive into that. That's a great idea, Ben. And I've heard you mention that before, so thanks for reminding me.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, just making a quick note. Okay, fantastic. And if there's others that folks can remember, I know that we're 5 years down the road on the publication of that implementation guide. So clearly, folks may have to look back a little bit to provide comments, but we'd love to have those as we move forward. So, all right, any other comments or questions or ideas that have come up in regards to interoperability while we've had this great discussion? Yeah, thank you for everyone's comments. Okay, Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you to work. Okay.
Just real quick, Clay, is that process going to be public at all or public to the vendors in the states about that renewal process?
Yes. We'll also try to make that as transparent as possible. We're using the same author who developed the implementation guide 5 years ago, Jay Lyle, and so we'll ensure that he's made available to the vendors who have utilized the document. We'd love to make that also be as kind of friendly as possible. Lots of work has been based on that. So we'll clearly all be migrating over the next couple of years, but I can imagine just ensuring that normative standards in place and as correct as possible will be valuable. So we'll also try to make that as transparent as possible, David. Thank you.
Good.
All right, great, Julianne. I'll turn it over to you to walk down through the rest of the agenda.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Next item on the agenda is to just go through really quick the vaccination questions that have been added to the EMS COVID resource reporting tool and how those look in the state dashboard. So I'm just going to show you real quick what that looks like. If you go to the NEMSIS homepage, the link is on the main page, and this takes you to the information about the resource reporting tool. You can open the tool itself, and then about halfway down, these 3 questions have been added for COVID-19 vaccination for rostered personnel. So this tool is available for states to use and promote with their agencies for assessing the status and needs of their EMS. So it's available to all the agencies and all the states. And then to see what that looks like in the dashboard, states can come to the V3 state dashboard page, and that's under view reports, state reports. And then down at the bottom is the link to the dashboard. There's also a link to the user manual or companion guide, training video, and another introduction page. I'm going to open up a sample of what the dashboard looks like. And this is just sample data. So it's just an example of the changes that have occurred on the dashboard that's available to state and federal partners. And this COVID vaccine section has been added so that you can assess number of personnel eligible for the vaccine, additional doses needed, and the number of personnel refusing the vaccine. So this is just to assist you in being able to communicate those needs within your state. I'm going to go back to the page here. I do just want to show really quick that each of our dashboards, as we develop them, we make the companion guide or the user guide available to the public. So even if you're not able to access the state restricted dashboard, you are still welcome to see the user manual. And in the user manual, it goes through inclusion criteria, what's included in the visualizations, and also how to navigate some of the visualizations. So those are all available on the website for anybody who's interested in how those dashboards are being built.
Yeah, Julianne, this is Clay. If I could just augment those comments, thank you very much. The NEMSIS TAC, of course, is very interested in ensuring that what we're providing out to states is as closely harmonized with what vendors are providing to states, right? We would love to not have, slightly different inclusionary criteria associated with what a vendor is providing compared to what we have provided. We haven't worked as closely with vendors in the past when we've kind of built our inclusionary criteria for some of this work. We need to be a little bit more transparent there. So yeah, it's clear that because of our data use agreements, there are situations where many of these dashboards have to be password protected. But if we want to work together and ensure that we're providing complementary information to our states, we're more than happy to open up deep dives into the inclusionary criteria, what visualizations we're providing, how those visualizations look and work. All of that is clearly outside of the security requirements we have for the DUAs. We just can't actually show the findings, the data. But in regard to the construction, making sure that a user isn't confused by the way that we present data versus how you as a vendor provide data. If you'd like to do a deep dive into any of these dashboards and work with our Tableau development team, we would welcome that opportunity to do that.
That was a great explanation. Thank you, Clay. Any questions on the COVID resource reporting dashboard or tool or other dashboard that you've got questions on?
Yeah, good morning. This is Joe Schmieder from Texas. Clay, we got a big public information request this morning on the collection of data on people that have gotten COVID in the EMS workforce. Is your data is that public information? If someone does a public information request, and where I'm going with this, I got to make sure that because we don't track it, but if we were tracking, we want to make sure that we're saying the same thing. So, and I was just assume this is just the first of many coming.
Yeah, Joe. I think you're right. I think there will be many more coming. Eric, we may want to have a conversation about that, right? I think we have some tools in place that provide clearly a subsample of what's happening in regards to the workforce, but I don't think we have a representative sample or a large sample. What do you think, Eric?
I would agree. Joe, can you send us the request so that we can see like exactly what was asked for and kind of help maybe shape at least a response or say, hey, this is what we think we could do or how we could get to it. And then we'll look at what we're allowed to release after we look at what we could release.
Sure. Yeah. And I was going to do that anyway. Eric, I literally just got right before this call and I thought we probably should get in front of this and not get behind it because it's going to drive us all a little crazy.
Yeah, I have a feeling that in the recent release of the ketamine report out of Aurora is going to be at the forefront of a lot of requests here in the very near future.
Okay, I'll send it to you after this call, sir.
Roger that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, Julianne, thank you.
Okay. One last comment on these dashboards. You can set them up, and we're happy to help you set up a push notification so that you receive in your email once a week an updated image of the dashboard, and then you can just click on it and it'll take you to the dashboard. So if you're interested in push notifications, just let us know and we're happy to help set those up. Next item on the agenda is Office of EMS. Mr. Chaney.
Thanks, Julianne. So just a couple things. One, I have to say, first and foremost, it seems that COVID is thankfully on the decline in some areas of the country, although it's still on the incline in others. I just want to say for those areas of the country where it is on the decline, please, for those on the call, be safe. Don't do your due diligence. Don't slack off when you're taking care of yourself and your family and others, because we need all of you and we need all your support. And I know your services do as well. So just kind of a general overview of taking care of yourself. Please put that first. For all of you participating in the ET3 project, I can't say enough. Thank you very much for your continued cooperation to make that program successful. As I've said numerous times, it's probably been the smoothest I've ever been involved in, where there's multiple federal agencies involved. And I really appreciate those you going the extra mile to supply the past data and to work with Neil and John to make it successful. I'm still working on a list of projects. I want to run a list of projects by this group to, as Clay said, in trying to be fully transparent on what we're working on. The example today, the IHE project that came out of ONC, that one kind of came about at a good time. We were able to put some funding towards it. So as we move forward with some of these big picture items, I want to get as much input as I can from this group. And we've talked about numerous ways to do that. We have the SME advisory group, an internal and external one. That's one way, but I'm thinking about doing something where we dedicate a short period of time in this meeting, or we set up like an hour at certain times of the year just to have vendors on the line to provide input. Hey, why aren't you working on this? This should be your priority. Any complaints, concerns, just the general questions in NEMSIS. So stay tuned for that. I'm working with Clay and the TAC to figure out the best approach for that. Looking at my notes, COVID vaccine tracking. I just want to say this. So as you're working with your agencies and you're working with your different programming people in-house, I've said this on numerous calls, and it's good that Joe's on the line. He's heard this. At some point, the government or the state or someone is going to come to the services and say, how much vaccine do you need? Have all your people been vaccinated? The ones that haven't, is it because they don't want it or because they just didn't have an opportunity to get it? We're going to be asked those questions at some point in the future, and we need to be able to answer those. So for those of you helping your clients build their vaccination tracking programs, please keep that in mind, that as we get to looking at the end of the COVID vaccination process, people are going to want to know, how much more vaccine do you need? So keep the end in mind for that, please. And then the dashboard sharing comment that Clay made, absolutely. As much as we can possibly share, we can. Most of the work that we do, all the work we do with NEMSIS is generated by federal dollars, so it should be free and open to anyone who wants to use it. I just want to make one comment, and again, this came back to Texas, so good Joe's on the call. Texas at one point asked to share a particular dashboard, and we had done that. They were going to create the same dashboard. The only thing that we ask is, if you create the same dashboard with the same title and same name, don't make modifications to it. And if you're going to make modifications to it, just change the name, so that as we have people who request information from us, or especially the press and others, what we don't want them is to look at the NEMSIS.org website and see tables or graphs under a certain dashboard with the same title at the state level, and it's completely different data. So that is a concern that we've tried to work around. And make sure that people know that. Otherwise, by all means, if there's something you need from us, please let us know. And I think that's all I have for now, Clay.
All right. Any questions for Eric? Are there any questions or comments for open forum? All right. Our next V3 implementation call is March 10th. We try to always keep them on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. So look forward to that invitation in the Google group notifications. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us today, and we appreciate your input, comments, questions, and participation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.